done incredibly well. So like you've done amazing to get to this, all of this. So
yeah, only took me about 4 or 5 hours. Didn't take me very long. Just want to. Fuck, why does this take so long to? Maybe I might need to turn on my hotspot.
and we are live.
Have you got your quote of the week?
Yeah, yeah. Warren
Okay.
Buffett, of course.
Oh, Buffett. Yeah.
Have you clicked it? What the fuck?
Yeah, I clicked it, man. It's just like, what the fuck is it going in here?
Last week was so quick.
Yeah, I know. So she.
Do you want me to click it?
Yeah, I don't know. We are live.
We're live?
Shit.
Are
Okay.
we? Oh, there you go.
Having trouble connecting. Anyway, and we are live on AUS Property Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big fun. Wow, that was. I wonder how much of that pre. Jeez, that's a bit awkward, isn't it? Righto, jeez. How you going anyway, Joe?
Mate, I'm fantastic. I'm bloody fantastic. Look at that. Everyone got the insights to the behind the scenes show of what we what happens pre going live.
Yeah.
That's awesome, mate. How are you?
Mate, I'm pumped. I felt a little distracted. This has consumed my mind, like preparing for this session and just wanting to bring the value and really sort of making sure that I left no stone unturned. And there was one stone I wasn't able to find, which was the FISO for the actual build. But I do have another FISO, so probably one of the key components. But yeah, I know, nothing special. Now I'm feeling really good, really excited, and just. If people, I'm excited to add the value. So let's get into it, man.
Well, this is why I'm pumped for this session is because we kind of sit in the background and the people, the guest that we have on the live is always the one talking about all the interesting stuff. But I think that you have so much value in insights into sharing on how to do a development and how to do a joint venture, and it's amazing that you've taken the time. So I appreciate you taking the time to unpack what this is. So really the overall of what we're going to be covering off today is Jef has done a development deal recently, and it was rather successful. He put very little money into it, and he got a rather nice achievement out of it. So he's used a joint venture partner. We're going to be talking to a lot about how to find, source, how you communicate with them, all of the stuff around joint ventures that you probably have and want to ask. And then we're going to unpack a little bit more about exit strategies, but going through using his example as using this deal as an example.
I feel like I got something in my teeth.
I feel like you've missed something. But...
Yeah. It's gone now, I hope. But yeah, and throw your questions in because we will get to those, and I'll aim to knock through a lot of this information as quickly. So there'll be some theory because I want to cater to somebody who's never done a JV before. And then sort of go a little more into the weeds. I'm sure Joe will ask all those questions that everybody's thinking. So shall we do the quote of the week, Joe?
Mate, I think what is your quote of the week? Guest first.
Okay, so I have to look this one up. But I also prepared something for you. I hope you look at my I prepared a bio for you, Joe, so I hope you look at that one. But
no.
Because it's always a bit of a trap to try and get the bio. My quote of the week is, once I zoom up, it is collaboration is multiplication. Multiplication? So that's by John Maxwell. So I think that typifies what the joint venture is all about, because you have a skill set or you have a resource that other people sort of require, whether that be money, whether that be knowledge or experience or time. So you have one of those, but you may not have all the components to fulfill to make a deal. So but if you
well, I like that because I think team is the ultimate form of leverage. Everyone's like, oh, I need to leverage through my money. Well, no, you also need to leverage through other people's skills and other people's examples and results. Like, I talk to people that have done better than me and that are in a position that I want to be in. And I ask them the questions, what have you done wrong? And what have you done right? So I can learn from that. And if someone's an expert in a particular area, I'm going to either, try and get it for free, or pay them to help me get the answers that I need. So I'm all for it, mate. My quote of the week is from that good man, Warren Buffett. And it is saying risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. So if you are able to know what you're doing, you remove that veil of risk as well. You just not kind of opens you up a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, people say that investing is risky, and certainly it can be risky. You are leveraging an asset, of highly leveraging in some cases. So, and if you don't sort of appreciate it and take that on board, then you can really magnify your risk if you don't understand what you're doing. And that's why I sort of in a lot of stuff I talk about here, or will be talking about, I think it's important that yes, you can sort of do it and work through it, but I think you really sort of can build up to these types of things and aren't sort of biting off more than you can chew, because you can sort of lose money significantly quickly in doing these types of things. You can get yourself into a bit of trouble.
Well, yeah, I also want to caveat that to say that you put, like, and we're going to talk about it, but like $8,000-9,000 into this deal. So you haven't really risked too much, right? Like my first renovation project, I put $0 in. I didn't put any money in. I didn't risk anything, and now I own a $550,000 asset. So I also want to let people know who are starting out in their beginning stages that there are options out there that allow you to go ahead and buy and own an asset and leverage an asset without putting any cash down. However, you are still on the hook for the mortgage and those type of things. So yes, do not go without. Yeah, don't take the risk without. Okay, cool. Well, I'm excited to unpack this one. Let's jump into our sponsor and then we'll jump right into it.
Let's go.
The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases, it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yields, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia. And not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey.
Speaking about risk, Joe, good old these Steve Polisi, apparently. Yeah. So if people have questions or comments, drop the like, smash the comment. Well, that's the other way around. Drop a comment, smash the like button, because we want to get people watching. So I want to absolutely spread the value. So I'm going to let you intro me, Joe. This is normally my bit, but
I know it feels a bit weird to intro people, but yeah, one thing is throw your comments in, because it would be good to kind of throw comments while we're doing the thing, and it'll be interactive. It'll be an interactive conversation. But who have we got here? We have Jef Miles, one half of AUS Property Investors. The man himself has spent 11 years working in financial services, heading up risk for a large financial service. So when we're talking about risk, this man knows a whole lot. And what I find interesting, when I first met Jef, he was a mortgage broker. He was absolutely crushing it, settling large amounts during that time, and knows a whole heap about broking, credit policy, all the different lenders, all of the different things, and has built his own multi-million-dollar property portfolio across multiple states. And as a little side note, he loves travel, sports, running, and spending time with the family, and long walks on the beach. That is a type of man that you're going to be learning from today. The man himself, who has just recently done a joint venture deal where he put very little money into himself and has been able to re-leverage that. But Jef, I want to take it back to the start. I want to hear about your first property investing experience. So take us back. How did you get into property investing?
So I'm actually going to present. I'm going to show you a picture
Sure.
of my first property. So because why not? Because we do have a visual platform. So I'm probably going to have to make this a little bigger, Joe. Just let me know if I do need to present. Oh, yeah.
Oh God, look at this.
Here we go.
There we go.
So let me know when it's big enough for you to see.
It's massive
So
right now. It's massive.
Massive.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Sweet. Okay. So this is my first property. I've even told you the street because I don't own this property anymore. So this is the humble little property in Zilmere in the inner north of Queensland, or Brisbane, so to speak. So this was in May 2015. So leading up to this, you and I spoke. People who have seen our conversation before know that Joe and I both missed the last Sydney property, or the last before the 2012 Sydney property boom. And I procrastinated. I still started looking at properties in 2011. It was educating myself and doing all that good stuff. And in the meantime, I sort of stuffed around for a couple of years and missed out on, I would say, sort of several $100,000 worth of gains. So I got to early 2015, and I said, I think I just need to outsource it. I need to get a BA on board. I won't no need to mention the BA's name, but they picked up this townhouse in Zilmere, which didn't shoot the lights out. So I believe I sort of overpaid. Made a few mistakes here and there along in that journey. So
wow. So this is this is definitely not the shoot the lights out type of opportunity here, because it says here purchased for 334 in May 2015, and then you sold it in December 2021. So you've held it for, what's that, 6 years?
7 years basically. Oh, well, 6.5, yeah.
Yeah. And didn't make much money whatsoever.
If you look
why?
at a lot of that sort of a lot of that gain of, what was it? We're looking at 21,000, and a lot of that gain would have been made in. So I reckon it would have probably gone, once I bought it 334, probably would have maybe sold at 310, 320, sort of up until about maybe 2019, and then as we sort of started to see the Brisbane property market, a rising tide lifts all ships. So look, this one now I've seen similar properties sell for 360, some sell for 370, some sell for 380. So look, it might have missed a little, maybe sort of 5 or 10%. But as we've sort of seen properties come back, I think that's where it'll sit for the next sort of 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. And don't get me wrong, from a rental, the yield on this was upwards of sort of 5.5%, 6%. So yield was fantastic. It was only vacant for 2 weeks. So if somebody's looking at cash,
what's the mistake here? What can others learn from here? Because you used a buyer's agent to be able to do this.
Yeah. So what I learned is I didn't I suppose appreciate. So I went to the buyer's agent saying I want to see capital growth as well as cash flow. So I want to see a good yield, and that's inherently what they got me was a decently yielding property, a property that sort of paid for itself, but at the same time there was almost no scarcity in the asset. There was a lot of, like, if you look in Zilmere, there's even to this day, or in the last sort of 6 or 12 months, there's a big supply of townhouses. Like, the houses in that particular suburb are probably sort of gone up between 40 to 50% in the last 2 years. Whereas townhouses, you might have seen about a 10 to 15% growth. So it's that age-old supply and demand. Like, what do people actually want? And there's enough land and there's enough development sort of interest that people are able to sort of build a 6-pack or even sort of 10 packs. There's many of those littered throughout the suburb. So I also bought with a Sydney mindset as well. I bought close to the train line, and I just thought, well, yeah, like, everybody's going to walk 200 meters and go and catch the train into the city. So I sort of, I trusted the information. I didn't sort of have my own clear goals and do my own kind of checks and balances in the area.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that what a buyer's agent's for?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's where a little bit of education, and you and I both went to and spent a lot of education in Steve Ignite's sort of course in 2018. So knowing what I know now, I would have just looked at that and sort of just asked a few questions and said, well, okay, I said I was keen on capital growth. What do you think is driving that capital growth? And not to nitpick everything that they're presenting to me, but just sort of, I sort of said that they said to me, well, what do you think about this property? And I said, well, yeah, okay, I think it ticks the boxes. Like, let's go for it. Like, there wasn't much more conversation around that, which I know that you and I in our conversations, and even I've seen some of your, like, there's a very clear objective that you have a clear strategy. So not all BAs are made equal.
Yeah, definitely not all but buyers agents are made equal. But I think that that's what the value of this kind of community is to get people to ask the questions. Like, the way I like to put it is, because exactly the same, Jeff. My situation, my first purchase was through a buyer's agent because I was a big concern that I couldn't go ahead and do it myself. And I didn't have the time. I had a full-time job, and I was the expert at doing my job and business and all of that. And I didn't have the time and resources to spend researching and finding the areas. But I handed over the keys of my financial future to somebody else, and I didn't have the education to be able to ask the questions that I needed to. What, like with this asset, it would be like, well, why is this the best property? Like, is this the best property in the best location for my buyer brief?
Yeah,
maybe, but is there more growth somewhere else? Because am I looking too much at cash flow rather than the growth prospects?
Well, and I think the thing that I found interesting is that I feel that this particular agency, they were sort of, Brisbane was tipped to be the next top thing from 2012, 2013, and all the way up until sort of 2017, when it finally did start to see some shoots come through. So,
yeah,
and I sort of think that they bought into that narrative, and that was at the price point. Whereas the area I'm living now, sort of the Illawarra, man, I could have picked up exactly the same asset. If I stretch a little bit more, and I could have bought up to 400K. So I bought properties here now, bought a house on a 600 or 700. Of course you can't. Now it's worth 800, 850. So the other lesson, I think, is sort of understanding, well, try and sort of picking up a bit more land if you can as well. So as I said, land generally appreciates, and buildings depreciate, typically, generally speaking. I don't know too many buildings that appreciate. So
yeah, not too many. Well, actually, in this day and age, actually, they're probably worth more than you knock them down and tear the bricks apart and be able to build a brand new house and make more money. So
anyway.
So one of the questions I then have is, you then ventured into good one, joint ventures. Like, was that your second purchase? Can you tell me about
so
why did you go into the second purchase for a joint venture? Like, that's not the typical.
No, it's not. It very much isn't, because I was starting to sort of, because you buy your first property, you get all excited, you start you get the rent in, and you just think, oh, I'll sit there and in a year's time I'll be a millionaire. Well, maybe some people don't think that, but you just think, it's going to, like, but you don't realize that you buying a property doesn't always mean that you're going to make money straight away. So I got a little impatient. So I thought,
especially a good point there is the asset that you purchased as well. You bought the end product. You didn't buy a product that, one, you could renovate to add value, or two, that you could subdivide and add value, or three, that you could subdivide and build a block. Instead of buying a property that had a house on the front that you could battle axe and sell, you bought the end thing, which is what happens when you build townhouses, right? That's the highest and best use of that land. There's nowhere else you can go with that, at least for the next 20 years. Sorry, go on.
That's all right. So I was going to a couple of sort of set wealth seminars and all that sort of stuff, and there was this one in particular that didn't just focus on property, focused on shares, focused on all types of gold, all those sort of assets. And I sort of, there was a couple of, they were talking about joint ventures or just sort of purchasing properties, renovating them, and then flipping them. And people had made money in this community doing this types of deals. So I thought, hey, this sounds really easy. Like, how hard can it be to buy a property, put a couple of licks of paint, maybe polish the floors, like sort of rip up the carpet, maybe do a little bit in the bathroom. So I thought, okay, cool. This is sort of this is early to mid 2016. So and that's sort of what led me to then pick up I joint ventured with somebody within that community who came on as a money partner. So they tipped 100K into. So we bought an asset. So this is the first joint venture. We'll get. And after I talk about this,
hang on. Before we jump into that, like, how did that conversation go with him or her? Was it him?
So interestingly, there was two. There was first. It wasn't the first person that I spoke to who I did joint venture with. It was the second person. So first person, it was a lovely couple, and we chatted, and they had the cash. So a lot of people in this community were business owners. So they didn't have the borrowing capacity, but they had a lot of extra. They had surplus cash sitting around that they wanted to put to work. So I had a conversation with the first person, and for whatever reason, life got busy for them, or they just wasn't a match. They thought maybe I thought it was a bit young, a bit green around the ears. So they just said, it didn't eventuate, but there was some interesting conversations. And then the second person I spoke to was a family bloke, and just somebody who and we both had a learning mindset, and we just had a more similar match. And then he sort of said, hey, look, Jef, I'm keen to do this. Here's how much. Let's kind of investigate where we can. So he had 100K, or a bit over 100K, and I think I could borrow just over sort of 300K. So those are the parameters. So does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah. So you've got 300K of borrowing capacity. You've already just bought a place in Zilmere that's taken your deposit, your cash, and it's not grown in equity or anything, so you can't do anything with it. Now you're like, what, do I just wait another 5 years and build a deposit up? Or can I do something else? Because I know that what we need for a deal is someone to find, negotiate, and secure the deal. We then need someone to run the project of whatever that project is, someone with money, and then someone with borrowing ability. So you were the borrowing ability partner, and the other person was the cash, and they had $100,000
money partner,
stamp duty, deposit, and then renovation as well. Okay, nice. Well, there's a question here. Which community is that? And obviously, AUS Property Investors, the best online community.
Look, so actually, the community has actually changed their name. So it's not in the big. It's more of the niche. I mean, I can mention the name, but it's not even. You can't even join that. But yeah, there are a heap out there. So this one was. I mean, it wasn't one of the well-known big property communities that are out there. It was actually like a holistic. So it's headed up by a guy called Mark. So yeah,
there you go. There you go. Okay, so yeah, let's talk through the deal. And so you're in Newcastle. You've got 300 odd K to spend. What happens?
So we picked up and we made several mistakes on this one. I can talk through that, and I can give you. Do you want the end result? How we ended up with that one, or do you want me to just?
I could skip to the good bits. I feel like we got time. We haven't got time on our side.
Well, I got so much content though, Joe. We're already at 20 minutes. So we unfortunately actually did not break even that property. We actually lost $8,000 in that deal, which. Yeah, I know. So originally we'd went into that deal with the ambition of making around 50K from that deal. So we went in with that. It was going to be a quick reno in and out in 2 or 3 months. So we settled on that property. So it was in a suburb of Newcastle, or the outer suburbs of Newcastle, called Tenambit, which I was looking at it last night, and it's just painful looking back at these because now it's close to doubled in value. But yeah, you kind of, those are the breaks, I suppose, when you get into one of the potential downsides of joint venture.
So why did it not make money? Like, where did we go wrong?
Yeah, so I was still quite green behind, still quite wet behind the ears, so to speak. And where did we go wrong? So we, I suppose, trusted the due diligence of somebody else and didn't validate the information. So through this community, there was sort of some people who'd done a deal or two, and they sort of prepared some due diligence for us and said, well, here's what we expect the property could sell for. So we didn't actually question the underlying assumptions. So this, and we also, so we expected it could sell for 420,000.
And how much did you put into the reno?
Reno was actually 50K, which is, again, you can tell another overcapitalized on the reno. So yeah. So this is probably and as you can sort of see, I made the mistake with the first buy and hold. First joint venture, we didn't quite nail it. The second joint venture came out with and this is how we made.
Well, yeah, but hang on, we're not done with this one. I think someone's made a really good point here. 8K to learn is cheap, really.
Oh yeah, and that was actually a shared cost as well. That wasn't so. I mean, okay. I'm not sort of. I don't want to downplay. Yes, that is money that somebody. Look, we could have ultimately held on, and just but the joint venture partner, he was keen to recycle the capital. I wouldn't have minded holding on because we would have been able to rent it out, and it would have rented for probably 400, 420, and the loan on it was probably like 250, 260. So, and this is what I'll go into some of this information down the track, because you kind of think, well, why didn't we hold that property? Because then, of course, it's tying up his capital. I mean,
well, yeah, you've got nothing into it, right? Like, you're just a borrowing capacity partner, and he's got 100K that he can go put into another deal, and make, a lot more money on it. So I can see where he would be coming from. And this is one thing to talk to as well, is like a joint venture partner. What type of deals are they suitable for, and what type of deals are they not suitable for? Do you want to chat through that? I know that's not a part of the.
No, it kind of is like you're sort of jumping around to my points, but I was going to get to those. But I know you like to sort of pull some different sort of threads. And so in terms of who it's suitable for, look, a joint venture, it really is about marrying up people's risk appetite. I know that sounds really kind of blasé and like vague and all that sort of stuff, but I suppose a joint venture you can even joint venture with a property owner. We've had Rob Flux on sort of 12 months ago, and he's talking about joint venture with somebody who owns the property, but you can do a joint venture on a renovation, on a subdivision, on development, even on a buy and hold. I mean, there's people that are asking the community quite regularly about if they should buy a property with their brother or a sister or a friend, because they can't necessarily afford to buy the asset that they want to. So there's a joint venture can be on almost any type of deal. What I would say is the further up the kind of advanced of the strategies, the more risk, as to your quote, risk is not understanding not what you're doing, or not knowing what you're doing. So if you've never done a development and you can't find somebody who has the knowledge and the time to do that, I think doing a development first up for a joint venture is probably not necessarily suitable for a first timer. Doing it by themselves.
So you were doing but you guys, did you have a buyer's agent to find that deal for you? But you didn't. No, you found the deal yourself, and there was someone giving you information around, hey, I reckon it'll sell for this, like a mate at a barbecue kind of thing.
Yeah. So there was somebody so we outsourced the renovation part of it. So this was there was an area that they were doing a lot of these flips, and they they sort of, so they would find a sort of property, because this property it was very tight. I could actually, I mean, I've got the address on it. I'll just share the property, Joe. Let's do it, mate. Why not?
Oh, God.
Let's do it. We'll bring it up.
I'll bring it up on RP data, because we'll be able to go back to older photos.
Yeah. Oh no, I've got the photos in the thing anyway. So.
Oh, do you? Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you've just hit on a point here that like, one of my big things is incentives, right? You don't want to incentivize someone not for a result. So you've kind of incentivized. How was the payment structure set up with this person to find the deal and then run the deal? Like, how did they get paid? Because you wouldn't want them to not get paid based on the return of the deal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is the property. So again, is that big enough there, Joe?
647 now. God, mate, this is
So this is the one that, so that's what I mean. It's close to pretty much doubled. So if you look here, so we bought it back in, as I said, June, and so we bought it for 303,000 and sold it for 386. So It's sat on the market. Yeah. The other, and this is where somebody like Scotty Agate can come in, is we chose the wrong agent. We chose an agent that said they could get us. They just told us what we wanted to hear. So so we wanted sort of 415, 420, and the agent's like, yeah, I'll be able to get that for you, easy, guys. And it sat on the market for 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. And we were talking to, and he's like, and he was conditioning us down. He was like, actually, guys, I'm going to get inquiries at 350, 360. And we're like, well, no way. That, like, why would we sell it? Like, there's no point of selling this. We're here to make money. So
yeah.
So, and then we
on the photos
literally
and go left so we can see what the old ones are first.
So this is the unrenovated property.
Yeah.
So as you can see, this is like it was ugly. It was an ugly duckling. So it had carpets.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that couch as well. Look at the curtains. Jeez.
Well, they staged it, obviously.
Yeah, look at the kitchen as well, mate. This is reno. This would have been a perfect buy. This could have been my Corio property, Joe. This could have really been my Corio property.
This could be. This is beautiful. This is a beautiful reno.
Yeah. And this is kind of the dimensions of it. So look, the bedrooms are a little bit small.
So it wasn't a reno that was going to fundamentally change the way that the properties looks. You're not adding bedrooms. You're not adding bathrooms. You're just changing it cosmetically.
But we did add a deck, which was a mistake. That deck was probably 15 or 20K. So
really, and what return did that beautiful deck give you?
Close to nothing, I would say. So here's what we did. So I gave it a paint, staged it up. Redid the bathroom.
Oh, wow. That looks good.
It does, yeah. So look, they did a fantastic job, but we just paid far too much on the. Like even you look at they polished the floors, so it looks really good. Put chandeliers in there as well. The kitchen, like it looks like basic features, but
that's beauty.
They even redid the grass. So look, it was they did a good job on the reno. And if we even look, they even made this little laundry area look quite nice. Which the value of that, I don't know whether there's much value in that. So yeah, that was
that's a beauty. That was a great reno. I'd be very happy with that if it made sense on a financial standpoint. But can we talk to the incentives of the people that you got to do the work? Because I want to understand why they could just spend whatever they wanted to and there's a bad end result for them if they're, how do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, so there wasn't aligned incentives, to your point, because they were essentially they were contracted to perform the work, and they did say yes, we feel that with this you may be able to achieve this result. However, they were still getting paid regardless of whether it sold for 420 or whether it sold for 330. So there was no sort of skin in the game for those people, and we did actually find out subsequently. Post this a while after that they'd sort of, whilst some of the projects had gone well, there'd been other projects that didn't go so well, as in people hadn't made money. So and that there were sort of delays in, like we actually they had all the scope of works done fantastically well. Everything went relatively smoothly. Everything was, the only thing we didn't, and that's on, I suppose, the people actually undertaking the project to do the due diligence on it as well. The
question here: did you give them a scope of works and a tight budget?
No, not. Well, this is before I'd educated myself, I suppose. This is 4 years or 5 years before AUS Prop. So this is close to 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the question there is, they led you and they said, we need to spend 50 grand. And you just said, yeah, cool. You've done these. I haven't done these. You just go ahead and do them, and you will know how to get the best return on investment for it.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, for the errors in hindsight, I'm mortified with the mistakes that we made on that deal. And this story does end well, people. Like, stay tuned. Like we can't just give you the great result. Look,
well, we need the warts and all. I think it's super valuable to know that not to give up, and that's the point that's the point that we that you're kind of getting here, is that you're growing and learning. And one of the people said, joint venture with someone who knows a lot and learn from them. So rather than taking on the joint venture project yourself, be the money partner or be the borrowing capacity partner and go through the process of being on them. So maybe let's talk to, you were talking about like a Venn diagram of joint ventures. Can you talk to what that actually means.
Yeah, I was gonna do up a nice fancy sort of I mean, you could just do a Google search on a Venn diagram, but
Use Canva.
yeah, I did use Canva, but I realized if I tried to do, would have spent hours on making it pretty.
Okay.
But the Venn diagram of joint venture, so I think it's quite an appropriate visual. So you have the money, you have the money partner, the borrowing capacity, and then you have the skills and the knowledge sort of partner. So they're the three sort of aspects. So it's very rare that somebody will have all three of those. So it's very rare that somebody has the skills, the knowledge, the money, and also the borrowing capacity. So usually, imagine that it meets in the middle where there's somebody who has sort of a one or two of those skills, and they can then sort of combine with somebody and marry up with that skill set. So the purpose, I suppose, or a goal of a joint venture is to uncover the resource that you don't have. So whether that be money, or whether that be time, or whether that be borrowing capacity, or whether that be knowledge. So that's kind of
so three components that look in. And how do we think about the split with those?
In terms of who gets what?
Yeah, who gets what? Like who? Because one of the things as well to think about is like one of the things that I think about is like a buyer's agent, right? You can pay a buyer's agent a fixed price fee to go ahead and find you a property, or you don't lose that money. You don't use that money as an upfront expense. You don't use that. But when you use somebody to find and do the deal for you, they will get a percentage of the deal. So you might use $15,000 for a buyer's agent to go find you that deal. But then if you integrate with them and they find the deal and run the project, they may make $60,000, $100,000 on, depending on the deal. So how do you think about splitting up the revenue of, because let's just say we have those three parties. We have the money partner, the borrowing partner, and then the finding and doing the deal partner.
Yeah. So there's and we've had sort of three or four people have done joint ventures. So Adam, so there's two, Adam Barry, a couple of weeks ago we had him. So there's, I suppose, two different ways you can think about doing this, and I've done it the way where you've allocated out a split. So you can either sort of say that that you sort of split it up and say I get X percentage, and then the other person gets the other X percentage, or the other two parties, however it is. So typically the person putting in the money, I mean, if you want to do it really simply, you could split up 25% for each component. So the four components are time. So who's actually sort of the knowledge is another component. So you could say, I mean, that can be, I suppose, 50%, and then you have the money partner, and then you have the borrowing capacity partner. So if you wanted to do it really simply, you could have the four parts, 25% each.
So however, what's time? Because I thought it was finding and doing the deal. You're now splitting that up to finding the deal and then running the project. So
yeah.
Project manager, finding the project, running the project, cash, and borrowing capacity.
Yeah, often it's the same person. Not. I mean, often they may get somebody who's less experienced to then sort of, or you may get somebody who's sort of really keen, enthusiastic to do a lot of the grunt work, as in call the 15 agents they need to find the deal, or call the people who have sites that are looking to potentially sell. So, because the person who has the knowledge, it's not necessarily in their best interest to be doing all that grunt work, because otherwise, how can they do sort of 5 or 10 deals if they're doing all that? They may have somebody who's, it's like a real estate agent, right? You have the senior selling person, you have the junior sales agent, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's one way to think about splitting up the revenue. So let's say that you split the deal. We do 33, 33, 33 if you're finding and getting the deal. Yep. But then what's the other way of managing?
So the other way is where you can offer a fixed percentage to the investor, to the money partner. And with that way, if you offer a fixed percentage, then that way the person who's running the deal, or the knowledge partner, I would say they're likely taking on more risk, because they're actually then sort of saying whether the deal makes money or not, which of course in most cases it does. They still have to find a way to make sure that person gets, well, they should make a way to make sure that person gets paid their percentage of the deal.
Perfect. And this is where this question, look at this. You guys are throwing out questions and they're coming up at the perfect time. Can you talk to the legal security that's put in place when doing these deals? Because
So
how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your money? And then how do you can protect your borrowing capacity? Now, when we talk about borrowing capacity, we mean that someone might work in a PAYG job, right? They work 9 to 5 in an office. They make $120,000, but they're very busy and they don't have time to run a project. Someone who doesn't have they run their business that runs projects like this, or they're a buyer's agent and a project management, they find and run development deals. They do the deal. And then you've got someone with cash. That's just, think about a small business, right? If you start a small business in Australia, you generally can't borrow for 2 years. You can't borrow to buy property, but you may have a cash flow. You may have a business that's spitting off cash flow. So you've got all this cash flow, but you've got no way to borrow money. So you get together with these 3 people and create a little thing. So anyway, sorry, that there was a question about borrowing capacity. That's how that works. But yeah, can you talk to the legal security that's put in place on doing these deals?
So first, I'll talk to some experience from some of the stuff. This is only my experience, so you have to speak to your solicitor. And if people are really interested in learning about this, we should get Steve's solicitor guy on, Lewis O'Brien. I don't know how to actually reach out to Lewis, but yeah, he's actually really, like, he's done this for over 20 years. So but legal security. So in terms, if you're the money partner, I've not been the money partner. I've been the borrowing capacity partner in both in the joint venture deals that I've done. So the questions that I would be asking because I've sort of seen is I would want to sort of see, because the bank is going to have first. The bank's going to have first title. Lewis is my lawyer. Yeah. He's very well known in the industry. Lewis O'Brien. So they're going to have first mortgage, the bank or the person lending the majority of the cash, unless you're borrowing it all from it.
If everything goes sour, the bank gets paid.
Yeah. Yep. So then you can. So then comes down to, well, how much are you actually putting? If you're putting 30% into the deal, then the other major lender lends 70%. And I suppose there's also the costs, also the renovation, the subdivision costs. The challenge you'll have is, yes, you can put a second mortgage or put a caveat on it, but the problem is, if the deal really goes south, as in if it goes incorrect, if it goes sort of belly up, if it goes like the Titanic, imagine it sinking, you hit the iceberg, then they may not be. The bank will sell it at just to recoup their costs, so they're not necessarily concerned about you as a second mortgagee. So that's a challenge. So then another way, you can put caveats on it, and I'm trying to remember who somebody spoke to it last week. They said the problem with a caveat is all it'll do is stop them from selling the property, or actually it may not even necessarily stop them from selling the property. It'll just mean that the person who then sort of, if somebody else decides to buy the property, the caveat will still be on it. So, I mean, and that may make it harder for them to sell the property. So caveats is one option, but I suppose, can you
have a second mortgage over a property?
Well, yeah, I mean, second mortgage, but if the bank's taking 80%, then they're gonna sell it for, let's just say the property is valued at 500K, and they have a 400K mortgage on it. They're gonna sell it for 420 or 430. And then, so you might get paid a little bit back, but then there's going to be legal costs. So it is a risk. There is.
And that's actually a point that I wanted to raise around this is, if you want no risk, put your money in a term deposit and you'll get that return for whatever the term deposit, not financial advice, obviously, but with doing, an investment, if you're getting 8% yield or 50% yield or 300% return on your cash, like Jef has done in this deal, there's going to be risks associated. So you do want to minimize the risk as much as you can by having as much security as you can.
So the way you can do that, Joe, what I was getting to is, I was talking about a long way, is with the person, if they have other properties, you may be able to sort of say, okay, if you're really backing yourself in this deal, I want to put myself on a mortgage with an interest in another property that person owns. Because then, and of course, you have to understand how much LVR, what sort of loan is on that property. Because if there's a 90% mortgage on that property, that's still worthless. Because if that property gets sold, you're not going to get anything. Or you could even sort of say, I mean, so there's ways that you can sort of understand their asset position if you really want to go to that depth. So it then comes down to ultimately how much trust you have in that relationship and how much that joint venture partner is willing to give up, and how much they back themselves, I suppose.
Yeah. One of the questions that's come up, how do we find joint venture partners who we can work, and how do we share profits? Now, I want to answer this one because this was one of the this is how I kind of met Jef. We're in a networking thing where we were at some live session, and it was, back when you could see people in real life. And let's experiment with this on a digital format. There are 3 partners to doing a joint venture development deal. Someone who has the cash but not the time, someone who has the time and skill to find the development deal, and someone who just has the borrowing capacity. So in the comments, if you just have borrowing capacity, say borrowing. If you have a lot of cash, say cash. If you and not time and borrowing capacity, and if you have the skill and knowledge of how to find and secure these deals, put your hand up and say you have skill, right? So cash, skill, and borrowing. Everyone's going to start putting their hands up for the areas that they are going to, and reach out to those people. Now, if you're a spruiker, please do not reach out to those people. But if you are someone serious that's actually going to come up with some kind of cool idea and some cool deal,
you're breaking a group rule here, Joe. You're asking people to DM
reach out to people. But okay, but that's how you do it. You reach out to people.
Did you take this, Joe, from remember when were you there when Dave Bradley did this in the audience?
That's exactly what he did. Yeah, that's why it stuck with me. I was like, this is amazing. Like, that's how you find skill. There you go. Look, Lee is there with skill and time, but he hasn't got the cash. I work in a small business that's spitting off a lot of cash, but I can't borrow money. There you go, cash. Like, this is how you find joint venture partners. It's just things like this and putting yourself out there to say, you know what, guys, I've got time and skill. I haven't got cash. I've got borrowing ability, but I don't have time.
Just so you know, if you try and do a post like in the group, though, we'll delete it.
Go to less admin groups that don't admin as well as Jef does, and you'll be able to.
So there are actually a couple of groups out there that do. And that actually, there are actually a couple of groups. There's lots of cash here, borrowing, skill and time.
Yeah, sorry, what you say?
Cash borrow. Thank you. So there is a group called Off Market Properties, and there's Deal Site Development Hub. So there's a couple of actually Facebook groups that are dedicated to this. And that was actually one of the points I was going to talk to. So my answer, that was a great way of answering it, Joe. I love how you think of. I was thinking of the exact same thing, but the way where you can find JV partners is in real life networking. So before COVID, we did actually leave our house and we did go to property events, and who knows, maybe Ozprop might do one. If Joe can convince me, maybe we'll do one of these days. But there's a couple of really good ones out there. There's Property Developer Network run by Rob Flux, and I'm throwing a couple of names out here. There is Property Chat as well. Property Chat, you might struggle to find joint venture partners. There's also one that Richards, there's a guy, Richards, I don't remember his last name. He runs a smaller property developers sort of meet up in Sydney as well. So there's all these kind of specifically purpose, or start your own networking event, like start your own networking group. Like the one, Bigger Pockets in America, what is it? There's this group can start the next run of QE with all the cash. Well, maybe it can. But yeah, so that's probably the most effective way of doing it, because then you're having a conversation, you're seeing people's body language, whereas rather than sitting behind a keyboard and jumping on, yes, that can work. It's effective to scale, but yeah, so that online forums as well can work. And then even joint venturing with property owners, which is probably the hardest form to joint venture. And you probably need a few runs on the board before you can do that.
Yeah. So I've lost where we are in the sequence of things.
Yep. Okay, so we were talking about where to find joint venture partners, which is kind of the next thing I was going to talk about anyway. And I think the reason I was able to find joint venture is I just started talking about it day in, day out. Like I started sort of all the conversations I was having with friends, I was having with, and not even, I'm not suggesting you should necessarily joint venture with friends or family first up, but just kind of mentioning it casually and saying, oh, look, I'm actually going to do a development deal. And I think I was talking to you about this as well. And funnily,
Yeah, well, one of the things, and I think that you don't even realize that you do this, Jeff, is the reason this group, the entire group started was because Jeff would invite all of his cool property friends that he's met. And I was like, how do you know so many people in property? He's like, oh, well, I had coffee with this guy, I had a beer with this guy, I had a chat with this girl, I had a coffee with this girl. He just got on the phone and met somebody, got their card or had a chat with them and said, hey, let's reach out, connect with them on Facebook. Hey, do you want to have a chat? Do you want to meet up? Do you want to catch up? Yeah, absolutely. And people remembered him because he's enthusiastic, happy to chat. And he put himself out there to say, I've got the borrowing capacity. So another question that talked about the borrowing capacity, a deal needs to get money from the bank. So a borrowing capacity partner has the ability to borrow money. So they work in a good job. They earn, $100,000 plus, and they can borrow $500,000 from the bank. So then the bank will lend. The cash partner will give the cash for the deal. If that makes sense. Sorry to repeat for the people who've already heard that.
Good. It's good to kind of solidify that. So,
but what you did, Jeff, was jumped on the phone, jumped on Facebook, jumped on Messenger, and just chatted to people and was excited about hearing what their goals were, what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing that too, like I think if you're doing it disingenuously, then people will cotton onto that pretty quickly. Like if you're literally speaking to somebody and the second sentence you say to them is, "Oh, do you want to joint venture?" Like I think it's hard to actually play it out, but I've seen it happen, and I've even I've been to a networking, and the second I've met this person, they've introduced themselves and they've said, "Oh, look, I'm X from doing sort of this," and then they've said, "Oh, look, do you want?" And then second thing they've said to me is, "Do you want to joint venture?" I'm like, "Hang on, geez, like let's actually buy me dinner first." So like, I think it's anybody sort of going in for the quick kill. Like, sure, if somebody is intentionally kind of saying, "Well, I've got cash," maybe that's then the time. But just sort of casually, it's all about sort of being as organic as you can. I know that's playing the long game though, rather than sort of if you want to find a joint venture partner, you're going to have a whole heap of conversations that are going to lead nowhere.
It's the law of averages. One of my first jobs ever was knocking on doors, doing door-to-door sales, and there was 100 doors, and this is where I learned about the law of averages. There's 100 doors, and you would knock on every single one of them. 80 of them would answer, 20 of them wouldn't answer, and then 60 you would get through half of your presentation, and the numbers got down before you would only close 2 deals in a day. And it's exactly the same thing with talking to joint venture partners, except the odds are not 100; they're probably more like 5. Like if you speak with someone and it doesn't work out, that's absolutely fine. There's another one just around the corner, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And just if you can understand best to be able to know and trust you. Exactly. That's the point. Like it's not about, to me, I don't Jef Miles plays hard to get. Yeah, maybe buy me a couple of vodka or tequila stuff.
Yes.
But no, so I'm
okay.
Gonna
so what are some of the so I've just put my hand up. I've got cash. I've got no idea on skill or ability, right? I've got borrowing capacity. I've got no idea about anything, but I have a good salary and I want to get into property, and I want to kind of guide along with somebody that knows what property is and all of that stuff. Good tequila is the worst. Have a good quality tequila and you'll change your mind. It's delicious. And then so what happens? How do you do that? What are some of the questions to consider or ask someone who's presenting the deal, right? So someone's saying, hey, I need someone with cash. I need someone with borrowing ability because I'm a buyer and a transactor, and I can buy and develop this deal.
Yep. So yeah, if you're the one looking to potentially invest, and even if you're looking to reach out to money partners or borrowing capacity, I think these questions are useful for both sides of the transaction or both sides of the relationship. So I'm just going to speak. I've got about 100 of them, but I think I've got 10 here that I mentioned. So What is what is your track record, and how many of this deal have you done? I think that's probably one of the key ones.
Yeah.
Because
PTR, we call that proven track record.
proven track record. That's a JJB one. I think that's
Yep.
I don't know whether he coined it, but yeah,
It is.
he's
He did.
pretty well known for that. So I think if it's somebody's first deal and they're looking for money, I would sort of want to say, well, you have to give me a higher return. Like it's consummate to, well, how are they actually executing that deal? If they've done 10 of them and they've sort of landed 8 successfully, and there was one in the middle that they didn't quite nail, you can sort of maybe still consider that person and sort of say, because if anybody said, oh, they've always nailed every deal they've done, everything's went perfect, that to me is a bit of a red flag. Because anybody who's perfect, it sort of means they haven't done enough deals, or they're potentially hiding something.
Yeah. And how do you uncover that kind of stuff though? Like, what are some of the questions I can ask to get through that bullshit?
I'd even ask, well, I mean, it's no guarantee you're going to be able to see through all the bullshit, but the question I would say is, what mistakes or errors have you made? And if they say none, if it's like, okay, well, what do you mean you haven't made any mistakes or errors? Like, I don't, like, surely that, like, even in any deal that I've done, that even the most recent done where we made money, we made probably 2 or 3 not vitally critical errors, but just sort of minor ones around financing, where we could have sort of sped up the process and saved on maybe $4,000 or $5,000 of interest. So just something like that, an example that they can actually demonstrate that they've sort of thought about that, rather than just saying, well, no, I'm perfect, I never make a mistake. It's like when you go to a job interview and somebody asks you, well, what's your weaknesses? Like, oh, my weakness is I work too hard. It's like, well, I don't know, it's just a cringy response. It's like, oh, I do too many deals. Like, well, okay, well, maybe that's a mistake. So I don't know if that helps, but
what else? What's another question? Throw some questions at me.
I want to ask this. So amount of return and security on offer. That's an important one, but I mean, we could unpack that. But let's nail for this show. So what happens if and when things don't go according to plan? And this a lot of these questions will form part of the joint venture agreement as well, the heads of agreement they call. Another question is, what happens if one party wants to exit the deal and the other doesn't? Like, what happens then? Who puts in additional capital if required? So if for example, there's a delay in the build costs go up or anything like that, who's responsible for putting in that extra capital? How active a role can I play? So if you want to learn along the way, and sort of, if you want to, what sort of details are you going to get? Are you going to just get an email once a month, or can you sort of carry along for site inspections or all that sort of stuff? How much contingency is in the numbers? So the feasibility, like when you say contingency, like have they built in 5%, so that if things go wrong, if you're only on a 15% profit on cost, and next minute there's I don't know, build costs increase, then how can you let's see, what evidence and research and assumptions underpin your numbers as well? Like, what sort of, how do they understand, how are they getting to that 200K profit from that deal?
These are amazing questions, Jeff. We need to do a post about this. Like, we have the questions to ask a buyer's agent if they're a spruiker or not. These are awesome. Like, we need to do something similar to that, where the questions to ask your joint venture partner.
I've sort of resisted, because I think there's people in the group that are sort of just beginning, and for the more, so happy to do it.
You need to ask these questions no matter what you are. Like, these are the questions you need to look, there you go. Can you do a dot post? Yeah, people are loving it, mate. I think that
I'll even do emojis.
Super high value. Any other questions you've got there?
Oh, I got heaps, but I think I'll leave it there. I mean, there's and these are the type, like, you probably don't ask all these questions the first time you meet a potential cash partner, or like, it's sort of over the series of 2 or 3 conversations, because I think the first time I would meet somebody who I might be sort of forming a joint venture with, I just literally say, like, what have you done in property? And kind of just have a sort of beer, have a coffee, have a tea, whatever it is you have, and then so just learn about their journey, learn about their story, and then if I sort of find that there's a bit of a click there, then I'll sort of follow up, and if I know that they do deals, or if I know they're interested in investing, then I'll sort of say, hey, look, really enjoyed the chat. Why don't we have, yeah, between winners and losers, better questions. Yeah,
that's a good point. Difference between
losers. I love a looser. But yeah, there's some, yeah. And the other sort of thing before we get into the important components of a JV, because I want to nail through these, is people sort of say, if you find the deal, then the money will follow. I'm going to sort of debunk that a little bit, because for me, if you have a great deal, probably the hardest part of it is finding the investors.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because you can't just sort of, if you find a site tomorrow and say, oh, look, it's returning 25% profit on costs, all that sort of, the numbers are, it's a fantastic site, and you don't have any investors lined up, then you actually, because if you're presenting, unless you're jumping on a forum and sort of saying, okay, here's the deal, which is still going to take time, because people need to learn they need to take time for you to actually, to trust that you know what you're doing for a start. So yeah. I think it's important to cultivate both.
Yeah, I think you need to cultivate it. But I feel like that's for the developer who's the next stage along. Like if you're doing these deals as the developer, as the project manager, I guess I'm more interested from the kind of beginner side of things, where you're the borrowing capacity partner or the cash partner.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we need to think about if we're the cash or borrowing capacity? And are there differences between things that we should think about if we're either one of those partners outside of security, do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I think the key thing for the borrowing capacity partner is, have you actually verified that you can borrow what you're looking to borrow? Because the challenge that we face with our development is I couldn't actually borrow for the type of deal that we were doing. So you really need to. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, well, should we jump into your development now? Like jump into the most recent one, because we've skipped a few. We've skipped ahead a little bit, but let's start talking about this deal, because we are an ad. Oh, actually, let's run the ad, because that's unfortunately what we have to do. So sorry for the next minute 30. Everyone go take a pee break, and then we will. Then we will.
Yeah, let's do it, and we can always do a round 2 if we absolutely need to, because heaps more content that I could have.
Yeah, I think that'll be super valuable to be able to actually go through now what this deal is, and then some of the challenges that you had and some of the things that you would have done differently, and share in what the success of it's been. So let's do it.
And that's what we promised. Let's do it.
This live session is sponsored by Scott Agate from Hello House. Scott has created the world's first property negotiation as a service business. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about it. When was the last time you negotiated on anything over $100, let alone a property that is going to be one of the biggest investments of your life? The vendor, they have a trained negotiator on their side in the form of a real estate agent. That's kind of like you stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson after never training a day of boxing in your life. These guys are trained professionals, and that's what they do day in and day out. And this is what Hello House does every single day as well. They negotiate on property to get the best buy price from the real estate agents. Scott Agate, he's the expert negotiator. He has been in this industry since 1995. He owned and operated 3 Bell franchises. Scott was the guy that was teaching these real estate agents all these agent games. He knows all of their tricks. Having him on your side is going to give you a massive unfair advantage and literally save you tens of thousands of dollars. Unlike other ways of purchasing property, Scott's incentives are aligned with you, the buyer, meaning the more money he saves you, the more money he makes, which is what you want. You need to have those incentives aligned. Scott has kindly offered our group a massive discount on the retainer fee for his service. So if you're looking to buy your next home or investment property, click the link below to get in touch.
So we're getting that run. We are getting that one remade eventually, but we've got the buyer ready, which is a fantastic course. It's good, and we'll have to get Scott on again eventually. But the deal. So Joe, what do you want me to just start off with? I have some nice photos.
Have you got mate? Let's start off. Let's start off with photos. So actually, can we? Yeah, let's start off with photos.
Okay. No. I think I need some more water. Been talking too much.
You'd be parched.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Sip your water, mate. I'll get you off the screen. Oh wait, it hasn't worked.
Nope.
Okay, go now. Oh, just me.
Sorry, Joe. Okay, I'll talk to it. Let's get into it. I think so this is the site. So this is a property in the western suburbs of Adelaide. So
Oh, 1 into 3.
1 into 3. That's correct. So that was one of the magic sort of items in this particular deal. So I can talk to. I'd have some footage of it beforehand. So this place was an absolute dump. Like literally, there was a pool there was overgrown backyard. The place was literally falling down. It was built in 1930 in close to original condition. There was so much rubbish in the place. Like I think it cost about 5 or 10,000 just to remove the rubbish. So it was an owner occupier though. It was a hoarder. So
okay. And was this deal found on market, off market? Like how was the deal actually found?
So it was on market. So it first listed, I believe, in March 2019, and then the project manager who was the joint venture partner for this one. So they sort of started looking at it in about June or July of 2019, and they it just wasn't selling because nobody could. I mean, it was a developer special. But nobody could make it it was a lot of them weren't aware that you could actually get free on this property, which is the only way it would stack. So with two, you won't, and I'll go into the numbers and I've got the feasibility. I've got a basic feasibility of some of it and the expenses and costs. But with two on this, you weren't going to be profitable. You would be losing money. The secret, you may know this secret because you're the mayor or the king of Adelaide, Joe. But what you could do, you could community title it.
That was going to be my next question: is how is this structured out? Is it a community title? Because it doesn't look like you can have this as a torrent.
Yeah, so it wasn't. You couldn't fit 3 as a torrent, so you could only have 2. So, but with a community, there was in this particular council, you could, and it's sort of in the western suburbs of Adelaide, so you can there's not that many councils that way. So so if your town planner really knows what they're doing, you can there is a way that you can fit 3. So this particular one, you've got the one there at the front and you've got the driveway. I've got some finished photos of it as well. You got the 2 at the back.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. I love that photo as well. It's like the structures. It's a weird that you've got a professional photo on just the structure half done.
It was a drone. Somebody did a drone. I think they were because we sold one off the plan, so to speak, or as it was being constructed. So we sold the front one as they were being built. So I think that's why we got this photo done. This was about.
One thing I just want to kind of within a minute, can you tell us how you found this because I feel like we kind of skipped the deal. Like we've been talking about how to find this person, how to get this deal done. Can you give us a high level snapshot of like the deal itself and finding the person, who they are, what they do, what your role is in this deal and how we got to this point here?
You asked me a few things there, so I'll try and cover it off in 60 seconds. But so I was looking so after I did the first joint venture, finished it in at the end of 2017, and then I sort of was looking. Because we didn't make money on that, I said, property doesn't work, yada yada. So I went to Steve's Millionaire Mega Conference, met Joe, and was inspired. But no, so then I sort of thought, well, hang on a minute, this property thing can work. I didn't have the education. I didn't know the right questions to ask. I was just flying blind, basically. So I was sort of looking for joint venture partners for 6 to 9 months. And it just so happened that a project manager down in the person who ended up being the money partner for this, I was chatting to him sort of on and off for 3 or 6 months. And I just said, hey, look, do you mind if you have a money partner pop up? Do you mind if I've got the borrowing capacity here, so I'm actually can borrow. And so he calls me up one day and says, hey Jeff, I got a site you might be interested in, but we got to act pretty quickly. Like, how about I'll send through the details, have a look at it, and let me know sort of next couple of days. So I said, all right, cool, because they were going to do the deal anyway with or without me, so they were keen to proceed. So I looked at it, and I'd already had my spreadsheet on what end properties because I wanted to do a development. So I sort of was looking in there. So he already sort of had told me what parts of Adelaide he was doing deals. So I was sort of looking and saying, okay, how much would an end product sell for? and sort of verifying what to make sure, because not making the mistake of my previous deal.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, exactly. You started to dodge some of those easy bullets that you kind of took in the beginning by asking better questions. Ask better questions, get better answers.
So that's kind of how it all came about, and I sort of said, yeah, sure. What I mean, if not now, then when? So I said, let's get this property underway. Let's get this deal
So
underway.
your role, if we would like, what's your role in this project? You're the borrowing capacity partner. Someone else had cash, and then this guy. Because usually what we find generally, and it's not always the case, is that these roles can be split up into two. If someone's finding the deal and running the project, they're going to be the one sourcing the money partner and the borrowing capacity partner. So really what you need to do is reach out to those people that are running the projects and chat to them. So someone actually reached out. There was someone who mentioned a person that I know that does deals as well. It was Karen. Anyway, they mentioned that person. Reach out in South Australia. Exactly. Reach out to these people because they'll reach out to you when they're ready, exactly like what's happened here. So you're the borrowing capacity partner. That other person and the cash partner, what was their situation? Can you talk to that?
So they were the project manager was the cash partner because
so he took okay, so he took the find the deal, do the deal, and then also cash.
Yep.
And then you were the borrowing capacity partner.
That's right. So there's only two, myself and him in the deal because, and which for me, the less people in the deal, oftentimes it can work better because he was running multiple deals at the time. He didn't invest in all of them. Some he would be doing for clients, but he would sort of then from the money he was generating from project managing, obviously he's got to put his money somewhere, and what better place than actually putting his money where his mouth is. So. And
also, did that make you feel more comfortable because he
definitely
put his money in and he was running the development, and all you're doing is the borrowing capacity side of things, so it should be okay.
That's right. So and essentially, I mean, I'm not saying that this is the way it should be structured, but I mean, he may have sort of wanted to have sought some legal advice on this one, but he essentially he put me as the person who was controlling the company, and of course, we've got a joint venture agreement in place and did all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of inherent trust in that. And of course, he was a local. I was in Sydney. So it's going to be a bit, he could sort of drive past at any time. So yes, I could potentially, what percentage profit? So I actually got it was pretty close to, I got the 25%. So you got the four components. So you got the money partner, you've got the time partner and the knowledge. So he was fulfilling 3 of those roles. Actually, I think it might have been. So I think I might have got 26%. It was either 24.
Yeah, and actually, that's a really good point, Jeff. Is you can't like those. We're saying 33, 33, 33, or 25, 25, 25, 25. Like that's just a basic thing to do. But if someone's got better influence, they've got better contacts, you may be willing to give a couple of % over because the deal's going to be better. So this is not set in stone. And this guy was like, Jeff, I really need a borrowing partner. I won't give you 25. I'll give you 26 because I'll make the deal correctly. There's this billionaire guy that does deals, and every time he structures a deal, 51-49, and he gives the other party 51%, and he takes the 49. Huh?
A controlling interest in the deal? Is that what?
No, it's just like a gesture of good faith. Like you're going to make more than me and blah, blah, blah. Obviously in the back end, he's a billionaire. So he's got all the controls. He set the company up. So, he has the right to control it and all of that stuff, but it's just like a little gesture of things. One of the questions is here. Who was on the mortgage and title? Jeff?
Me. Because the reason why he needed a borrowing capacity partner was because he was making a lot of money, or probably is still making a lot of money in his business. But his business, so he couldn't borrow through a traditional lender. So he would have to go and subsequently we did have some challenges along the way as well. So
just before we jump into those, one of the questions that it asks is, what is the legal structure for the JV, i.e. a company, and who is on the title? So we're kind of touching on that, but I do want to just mention like the whole company title thing. And this is not financial advice and
not legal advice. Yeah.
Not financial or legal. We got a little disclaimer here. But Jef, what did you do in this situation? Well, explain it to us.
Here we go. We're back. Just wondering about the legal structure. So we were pretty. There was a lot of trust in our. I wouldn't necessarily suggest 100% that you do it this way, but we literally set up a very basic company, and we're comfortable with that sort of structure. Whereas where I was, we had some challenges with it. So originally we set up the ownership structure in the same split as the profit split. So as in the money partner was 76% ownership in that, or he was 76% kind of, I was the sole director of the company, but he was then 76% shareholder. I was, or 74%, I was 26. And then the lender, because we went to a traditional bank and they said, well, hang on a minute. Why is this person who doesn't have any interest in the property, isn't a director? Why do they have a 74% sort of shareholding? Doesn't make sense. Yeah. So we sort of said, well, how do we get around that? And they said, well, you have to reflect who is actually. So we switched around and just sort of significantly reduced. And on the back end, we had it in a joint venture agreement. So of course there's documents in the background that reflected our agreement. But for all intents and purposes, I was I think we ended up being, I was 90% sort of shareholder. And then we just sort of, we spoke to our accountant, spoke to Jeremy and sorted through that.
Yeah, right. So that's awesome. I love that. You're the director, and all of a sudden they're like, no, you can't be the director, and then you just create an agreement. So the company is there, and then on the side you have another agreement that says, no, I'm not. I don't own the controlling stake. The other person is.
We're equally able to make decisions. I mean, we could do a whole session on joint venture agreements, and what you should write. We won't, because that's a massive rabbit hole. But
but that's super exciting. That's super interesting. One of the questions here is to clarify: you were the director of the company, but held only 26% of the shares. And I think you kind of cleared that up a little bit.
Which makes sense why the bank questioned that. It's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you be the director but not the majority shareholder? And there's probably reasons where people do that. Down that big rest. Well,
I mean, you weren't the sole director. You were co-director, right? No, you were sole director. No. Yeah.
I mean, yes, there's risk in that, but it also means that I'm the one. Yes, I'm the one that if things don't go according to plan, I mean, I am the one that's liable as a company director. So because it's not something you should ever take lightly. I know.
That's the thing that I think is the most interesting. Well, maybe not the most interesting, but an interesting point on this is that I see the person putting the money in as the biggest risk. The person doing the deal has the least amount of risk, has a low amount of risk because they're just doing a deal. And then the borrowing capacity partner, who cares? There's no risk for them. They're just borrowing capacity. But that's not the case.
No, it's not, because let's just say if you do something really negligent, then any assets, I mean, yeah, sure, you can set it up as a company structure, but if something that not even you do on your own accord negligently, that can then you can lift the corporate veil, so to speak, and you can. So there is big implications if things don't go, if things are deliberately, intentionally done incorrectly or not. Yeah. So look, it's unlikely, but.
Where a good comment comes in. I love the trust in each other, good, honest people doing good, honest business together. And I think that goes right back to that initial conversation that you're having with the people. If you get a bad vibe about the people, and
definitely,
this could be a bit of an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, or if somebody's nickeling and diming absolutely everything, I would sort of the way somebody starts a joint venture relationship is typically the way it will continue, and it won't. If there's a nagging thought in the back of your head that sort of, because I've had conversations with people who I'm thinking, they've got sort of several $100,000 or whatever it is, or they can do deals, but they'd said a few things in initial conversations, and look, I probably do it as well. Like, I'll probably say something that's a little bit kind of idiosyncratic, or I'll start singing on a video or something, and it's like, this guy's a lunatic. Like, no way am I handing over the keys of my financial future to this guy. So you do something a bit funny in a conversation, and then you sort of, if you pick up on that, maybe like it just sounds a bit kind of like listen to that sort of instinct, because it's
100%.
probably going to
Yeah.
carry on and will be magnified throughout the process as well.
Yeah, I don't think just totally rely on your gut, but if you get a good, like with people, if you get a good vibe on someone, then yeah, absolutely try. Like
Always get it in writing, of course, as
trust
well.
but
Get everything in
verify.
writing, get everything legally agreed, do all that sort of good things as well.
Exactly, and that's exactly what you did in this situation. Was not only did you have the director, not only did you set up a company that was you were the director, not only did you have the mortgage, the first, like you were on the title, you owned the property, you put no money into this property, and if everything went sour, you would own this property. Is that kind of what the rights were on there?
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's, I suppose, the challenge. So this, of course, we had an agreement in the background. So that's a key question. Like key question that people should be considering as well is, how do you resolve disputes? Because if I wanted to go ahead and sell the property, of course, this person's not going to say, well, Jef, I'm just going to let you sell. Of course, they would have several $100,000 sort of riding on this deal. So they're going to say, well, no, I'm going to take you to court for that. And then they're going to present that joint venture agreement. So there is gray area on how legally binding some of these documents are. So that's where you really need to lean on.
Yeah, you need to lean on relationships and the person.
Well, I was
because
going to say lean
everything-
on your own legal advice. So if you both go in the same solicitor, that's a bit of a red flag to me. Go and seek your own independent legal advice from somebody, so to make sure you understand what's going on.
Yeah, but also you still have to take them to court. Like it's not going to be an easy process. It's never an easy process. So they may be right. You may be right 100%, but you've got a lot of challenges ahead of you if you are going down the legal path. So you just got to avoid that in
financial costs as well, and just
heartache.
So
what are some of the important components of a JV? We've covered it off a little bit, but it would be great to kind of go through some of your top tips of key components for a JV.
So when we say components, do you mean which? When you say
5 must-haves of a JV agreement.
Okay, cool. I've got that. Here's some I prepared earlier. So I've got some. You've got to have an exit strategy. So, I mean, this is a. I don't think I had this as a question. It's just hundreds of questions you can ask. So an exit strategy is essentially, An exit strategy is, as the name sounds, like how are you actually, what is the plan to sort of sell the property, or what is the end game of the deal? Are you going to sort of get the development application in place and then sell it with the DA? Are you going to build the properties? Are you going to renovate and hold for 2 years? Are you going to sort of renovate and hold for 10 years? Like there's so many different ways you can, but just it's clear to have multiple. It's great to have. You got to have multiple exit strategies as well, because yes, we're going to build free properties, but what happens if you can't get the finance for that? What are you going to do then? Do you then sort of get the DA in place and then sell with the DA? And what's the consequence of doing that? Are you still going to be able to Are you going to be able to break even at the very least? And if you can't do that, then there's a bit of a. I mean, there's a bit too much risk in that deal for my liking.
What if? That's the question. What if this? What if that? What if? And if the person hasn't got a good answer for you, maybe they haven't done the research that they need to do.
Yeah. The other one, what happens in the event of someone being able to or needing to exit the deal? So let's just say some of these deals could run 5, 6, 7 years. Like what happens if somebody sort of, touch wood, ends up in a health situation where they, particularly the person running the deal, what happens then? Who takes charge? Because then it's potential that somebody could have power of attorney. So what happens? And it's important you probably write that in the joint venture agreement, sort of in the event. I know it's very morbid to think that, but if it were to happen, who takes, how does it sort of get resolved?
To the deal, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Who is responsible for which task? So I think this is very important, because if you're not clear on this, and if it's not sort of documented, then you can end up sort of stepping on each other's toes. Because if you're a money partner and if you want to go and pick the color of tiles, then I think it's just clear that the person, you sort of understand what you can sort of have a say in and what's going to be the domain of the person running the deal. I think that's
and I think this is an overlooked thing. Like I'm the expert in finding, negotiating, securing, and running the projects. there needs to be a leader of the project, and you can't have the money partner, the deal finder, the borrowing capacity partner all chipping in. Just, you need to hand over control to that person. And that's why it's so important to trust them. But I think it's very important to have those clear roles, because you must see that, Jef, where someone's not so clear and they put their hand up and it's like, no, I don't agree with this decision because it's not the best, but it may be. And you're just silly.
The role of communication in these things is completely underrated, and just kind of actually it's knowing, as the person running the deal, it's about the way you communicate that, because if you may sort of be correct, but if you sort of come up and say, well, no, you're wrong, we're going to do it this way, that's potentially going to ruffle some feathers, which sometimes you might have to ruffle feathers, but if you can avoid that, then that's hopefully best for the harmony of the relationship.
Yeah.
The next one is, what happens if the strategy needs to be changed, which I think sort of pays of an exit strategy, and how any disputes be resolved, which I sort of talk to that, because I think ultimately, if you can resolve it without going to a formal resolution or formal sort of legal proceedings, I think that's the best for everyone. If you can't, then that's, but at least have sort of a couple of clear sort of steps in play. Maybe even have an impartial third party who can sort of say, well, step in and sort of look to somebody who has a bit of knowledge and understanding, and sort of says, well, but doesn't have a vested interest in the project.
Yeah. And also, I think mapping out what can go wrong and what do you think we should do in this situation? What do you think we should do in this situation? Okay, cool. Let's write that down. What do you do in this situation? What do we do in this situation? Now, it's not necessarily something you will actually do in that situation, because there's always variables, but it's important to have those conversations, because one of the things is you'll realize who those people are when they say, no, what do you mean? You don't know anything about color. I'm a color expert. I know everything about color. I'm going to choose the paint, the color, the vines, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, well, that's not what's the most affordable and what's going to get the job done. So if you have those conversations up front, it's just, there's a lot of upfront, like, I don't know, Jef, is this true? There's a lot of upfront work and back end work before you even start.
Yeah, I think if a joint venture that's hopefully going to be successful and sort of relationship, and potentially one that's a repeatable kind of thing with the same person, I think you really need to sort of lay the ground. It's like building a property or building a property portfolio. Like if you build it on sort of if you build it on shaky ground or sort of unsolid foundations, and I think it could potentially fall over, and it may be fine sort of starting off, but down the track.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm interested to go deeper into the deal now. Like, where do we go wrong? What were some of the challenges that we had along the journey on this deal? Because everything isn't sunshine and rainbows. And at the end of this deal does do incredibly well. So don't get me wrong. We've knocked down a house and we've created a community title and made three dwellings, as you can see with what
let's
Jef has. Do you want to share this?
What I'll do is I'll quickly run through and we'll talk through the challenges. So here's the building stage. So we've got some happy snaps along the way. And this is so I put unique approach there because that was the community title we sort of did. So as you can see there, that's up the driveway to the back two dwellings. And this is, and then this is the finished products. Now I think this is a bit glammed up, but so they are quite small somewhat. And let's see.
Especially the back two. The back two are very small.
Yeah. They weren't a bad size. And this is the bathroom as well. So, but as I'm sort of talking to that, what I'll do. So let's I'll unpack some of the challenges along the way. So we started this deal at close to the end of 2019. So we all sort of know what happened at the start of 2020. So good old COVID, of course. So at that stage we were starting. So we got approval for the free in. We got it in sort of 3 months. So got it pretty quickly.
So you got the development application.
Yeah. So 2.5 months. So we lodged that as soon as we settled.
What council was it with?
It was was Western Suburbs of Adelaide. I think it was Enfield.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sorry,
It was either Enfield or Charles Sturt over there in the Western Suburbs of Adelaide. So it's in the Semaphore area. So, but look, yeah, I wouldn't be. I'd be very cautious on doing this deal now because I think the cost.
Also, the rules have changed in Adelaide, and the state has taken over some of the guidelines. So this community title may not be able to be done anymore. So yes, in 2019 this deal could be done, but in 2022 it's a little bit different. So just be a little careful.
So yeah, with the one of the key challenges, because banks were getting a little nervous, and of course I do work in a role that was unlikely to get sort of laid off, but they sort of asked a few more questions, and so we struggled to get finance through a major lender, as in for this particular deal.
Why do you struggle to get finance?
Well, just because a lot of everybody's getting like unemployment sort of increasing. People are on job seeker, so there's just there wasn't a lot of risk appetite to do a free townhome development project.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, particularly where there wasn't. So it was potential that we may have kept these. So we were aiming to use rental income to service it, which was necessary. So servicing was sort of a bit of an issue. So there were enough hairs on the deal that they just said, well, they were dragging their heels and they're saying, look, we could approve it, but you'd sort of, and I don't think the broker necessarily knew what they were doing either. They didn't know what they were doing, but it sort of seemed like some of the lenders that they were suggesting, I was like, well, that's not the lender that I would. But I was like, if you think that you can get the deal done through there, so we did try a couple, and we spent 3 months trying to get that across the line. So, and it was worth trying to do it because ultimately we had to find a private funder who was charging, I believe, 11% per annum. As opposed to at that point in time, we could get finance at about 3.5%.
Wow. And is that because the property that you bought couldn't be rented because it was a complete squalor and it had to be knocked down? So you knocked down the property thinking, oh, it'll be okay because we'll be able to put 3 dwellings up. But the bank is like, well, you've got a piece of dirt. And I can't sell a piece of dirt at the value that I love.
I mean, maybe that played into it a little bit. I mean, the only because ultimately it was going to have 3 dwellings on it. So I mean, that might have played into it a little bit. But they were sort of, I mean, so it's at the height of we're talking sort of June 2020 here. So we're sort of seeing COVID rip around the world, and sort of just not know the world was going to end. So
I mean, share prices dropped 30%, like.
Then they sort of rebounded like 20 odd percent, and then sort of pumped on even further. But yeah, we digress. But yeah, so it's sort of that may have played into it. But yeah, so we in the end we sort of not cut our losses, but we said, well, hey, if we still want to build this, which we did, that was in the joint venture agreement. So we said, let's kick on and let's bite the bullet and let's get this private funding. It's going to cost us a little bit more.
Like that's a lot. Like from 11, like you talk about a 3% mortgage to an 11% mortgage. So how much is that in real terms? Like, how much debt did you actually take on? And
so the peak debt was $1 million. So imagine what's that, $100,000 in interest alone. So. But of course, it wasn't actually running. The meter wasn't running. So with anybody who's done a construction or development will know this, that you have drawdown sort of like progress payments. So it wasn't 11% at $1 million. So it was drawdown periods. So each drawdown it would then sort of accumulate. So it was sort of, I think the first tranche of transfer funding was about sort of, I think it was sort of 200,000. So I think I think it was only ever $1 million actually, and we even sold one as well. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to sell one, to reduce the. So I think the most the debt ever got to was about 650, because we sold one, which then reduced our debt. And the other thing that the private funder allowed us to do was capitalize the interest. So rather than us have to pay it out of pocket each month, it just added to the total loan, so capitalize it into the loan. And we negotiated that up front and said, well, let's allow 50 50 or 55, 60K for interest repayments that were then going to the private funder.
Right. Okay. So this is a perfect example of what can go wrong, and it did go wrong. You can't get funding, so you then have to go to some back alley deal and what was the lender like?
Well, look, it was a reputable lender. At the same time, it was a non NCPP, so was it National Consumer Protection Act? So it wasn't a regulated loan. So essentially, yes, there is. So it was written under commercial sort of terms. So it was a private funder. It was a business that had been around for many years down in Adelaide. So it was somebody who was comfortable. Like, it wasn't somebody who was going to break your legs if you didn't make a payment. But that's probably what somebody said. But what would happen was the financing term was only for 12 months from the first payment, as in the first sort of progress payment. So after that, you would then incur additional sort of penalty interest repayments.
Jesus,
so
how much are they?
So instead of being 11%, it would go to 12% plus a monthly admin fee. So it's not
Okay. It's not like a credit card, like where it's like, oh, it starts at 13 and ends at 23, or
But at the same time, that compounding, so you don't necessarily, So that's one of the things that didn't go 100% according to plan, which probably chipped about, I'd say between 50 to 80K out of the deal, out of the profit.
Jesus Christ, 50 to 80K out of the deal.
Well, when you think about it, and plus you had sort of application cost like these. So I suppose the option was we could have exited there and tried to sell with a DA in place, which would have we ended up there was a risk that we might not have been able to sell these properties. But absolute worst case scenario, if it got to stupid, if it was costing us way too much, and this we would have had to renegotiate this, but we could have rented out the properties and gotten a traditional, because they were going to rent for $500 each. So you're going to pull in $1,500 a week rent. So
how much capital was actually needed for this job? Like,
let's do you want me to share the costing, Joe?
Yeah.
Let's kind of.
Yes, I would.
Yeah. Well, that's funny that. So I'll stop sharing that one. I'll share a different tab. I'll remove this one. So we'll sort of start to get into Q&A, because otherwise we could talk about this all night. Stop stream, present.
That was my plan. But yes, getting into the details, getting into the numbers would be super interesting, because it's kind of interesting that you're getting $1,500 a week rent. Okay, cool. So what are we looking at here, Jeff? Do you want to zoom in maybe 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, we'll zoom in a little bit. One more. Yep. Okay. So I've taken a lot of the information out. I've left the dates and some of the description. I haven't taken. Did have names in it, and so stuff in here. So these are some of the sort of more miscellaneous. Like, we do have like all the cost breakdown for each of the stages for the building of the property. So we had even sort of land tax, because it was held in a. So you got, let's see, fixed carpentry, your electrical bill. You had completion. There was a shortfall monthly interest repayment. So if we go down to, even had drinks and food for a launch party. Jeez, look at that. So the total project costs. So it was these 2 amounts. So it was it was 1 point. Actually, no, sorry. So here's the exact cost. So it was 1.376 million. So cost versus income. So if we look at, we'll stay on this, and this is the breakdown as to what each partner received.
Yeah. We're skipping ahead a little bit. So what's $1.5 million? What's that? Let's start with that top expense. What's that?
So $1.5 million. That is the so the build cost was $600,000. So free. So you would not get. So these contracts were the reason we were able to get. So these were sort of smallest houses, as you've seen. So they were like for the same house, you probably pay at least 300,000 now, particularly given the inflation. So at least 300, maybe in 320. So in the project manager he was doing multiple builds with the same person. So they were happy to sort of, because they were essentially volume building, cookie cuttering the same product. So they was able to get an absolute steal on the build, which saved us a little bit there in the end, but we needed that.
Yeah, and this actually that's a fantastic point about going with a project manager or a developer who runs these projects because they have the connection. So you may pay a little bit more, but you're getting a return on your investment. Like that's awesome. You've already saved, usually it would cost $230,000 per dwelling. I mean, obviously not this day and age, but you're saying you got it for $200,000 each. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure exactly what this that was
times by 0.165%.
Yeah, probably some sort of. Oh yeah, so it was. I think that was it wasn't GST, but there was some sort of. Yeah, it was based on some sort of tax. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was a cost of. And then what we had is this was the money. This is the exact amount that the money partner put in. They put in close to 270K.
So cash for the deal. How much was the purchase of the house?
$460,000.
Wow.
So that's why that was 1.05. So maybe the build. I mean that could be 1.06 instead of 1.05, or maybe the build was a little
460 minus whatever the rest of the build was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in for a total. So total cash involved is you've put $7,000 into this deal.
Yep.
And the builder developer has put 269,000. So this guy could have actually done this himself if he had borrowing capacity. So the pure value that you added was you had borrowing capacity and you had an extra $7,000. Which what was the $7,000 for?
I was, because the loan was in my name. Some of the initial loan, as in the one from the major lender, that was coming from the account because I was the setup.
Yeah.
I was set up as the account owner. So he would transfer. They would transfer half the loan payment. So we split the loan repayment, and he would transfer that once a month.
Okay, cool. So we're in for $1,376,000 to get this deal done. So far,
that's including GST as well. So that is your net. That's every cost.
Okay.
And this is I suppose, well, not every cost. I mean, and then. So this amount was the gross profit, and then distributed out to the way we did it was we distributed out to our respective entities.
So you made so this deal, you bought it for 460,000. You spent $600,000 odd on a development, and the developer spent 270,000. You spent 7,000. And you both made together as a couple $112,000 essentially.
Yep,
$112,000 in profit. And how long did it take? What was the time period?
Yeah, that was probably the other, because it had that delay. So probably, and they towards the back end, the builder did have some issues with the supplies. So we probably got delayed with the builder by about 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. But we were very fortunate. Like if we'd have settled on this 6 months later, so that's where your contingency is vitally important, because this 110K, and that's where, even if you look at the profit on the total, profit on
actually
cost,
before we talk about that, can you tell us what you expected this to be? So what were the expected costs of the build? What were the expected costs for the profit?
So expected costs came in as expected, 600. The one that blew out was the financing. Understand, an extra sort of 50, extra 60 or 70, and the end sales. So we sold one for 479, one for 510, and one for 499. So we expected to sell each for about 500. So it came in close to what we estimated.
Okay.
The expected gross profit was we anticipated in the 200K vicinity. So we undershot by, as I said, probably about 30%, which is basically the finance.
Well, if you were expecting 200, you've undershot by less, like
40%. 40%. as in we made 60% of the anticipated.
So this is a prime example of, like, this is an amazing deal, don't get me wrong, but some stuff has gone wrong here that you both couldn't control, and it hasn't gone to plan. So even the best laid plans can still have challenges. So one of the things, a metric that people look at is the profit on costs. So how much did you guys make, which is 111,000 over the cost, the total development costs. So this deal, and you hear it all the time, is you look for a 20% margin. Look for a 20% margin. That's the
a
goal.
very thin margin, extremely thin margin. To be fair to that, so this includes some GST, which, I mean, you shouldn't. I mean, I don't. Some people could but that's not going to make it 20%. That might make it sort of 10 or 11%.
Yeah, and what happens if you throw the number up to 200,000? So that was the expected return. Like, the margin, the profit. Go profit 200,000.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So manually change it to 200,000.
Yeah, I'll just manually change it.
Yeah. That would make the profit on costs 15%.
Still not quite your 20%.
Yeah, that's still good. And this is the thing, right? This is one of the things that I think is worthwhile mentioning. So scroll down, Jeff. You made 50. Oh, actually, Control Z.
I have to go back now because it's
yeah. So you're borrowing, the person that set the deal up got $85,000. Jeff, you put $7,000 in, and you made $26,000 over 12 months. So you got to. That
was a bit more than 12 months. So let's say 18 months.
18. Okay. Very minimal skin in the game, and you've just tripled your money.
Apart from yes, you are a company.
Sorry.
Apart from yes, you are a company director. So there is some. You do have, of course. There's always risk in being the sole director of a company, because you are on the hook if something's done sort of untoward. But yeah, apart from that, yeah.
I'm going to rely on people's questions and comments here, because that was an amazing breakdown. I love that.
Another lesson that, as a developer who's now done this, I'm going to say done it a couple of times. So the one in Newcastle, or the Tenambit, which is now worth what, 680, and do you want to see what these properties 12 months in Adelaide? This is what you've been buying, some crackers in Adelaide. I'll quickly share this.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to buy that property for. I mean, I don't buy something with such small land size on community title, but I imagine it's going to be above 600,000.
Yeah, so this is where, and of course, this is only realestate.com, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is probably the one right at the back, this is the one at the front, which actually people don't want the one at the front, they want the two at the back because they've got sort of more privacy.
Very interesting. I expected the front property to be worth more because it's much larger. So you retain the front house?
No. So we knocked. So that there was an absolute dump of a house on it. So knocked everything down. So there was completely flattened land. So the one at the front is probably a little bit smaller actually. So it says 247 there. So I think actually no, it's not. But I think people just don't like being on the front because they want the privacy.
But also that says year built 1930. So that's probably incorrect. Everyone, throw in your. As we go through this, throw in your questions and comments below about the entire project, and we'll cover those off.
Sorry, so this is what's a little bit painful, Joe. I mean, yes, it is a realestate.com, so it's not a bank valuation, but these, so it says high confidence. This is based on other sales of similar properties. So these, if you add these numbers up, that is at least 1.8 million, right? So
yeah, 1.8, and you sold it for how much?
1.488, so basically 1.5. Yeah. So let's say it's made at least 300,000 conservatively. So that just shows how hot the Adelaide property market is. Because in this particular area, it's right near the sort of beaches. It's sort of close to Glenelg. It's not quite Glenelg, but it's down that sort of even Largs North sort of semaphore way, which is starting to become more and more sort of trendy.
Yeah, it's a good little spot. Like, it's not a bad spot to be buying in. If I could,
but yeah, moral of the story: if you can keep those properties, and they're throwing off about sort of $1,500 a week. So let's just say you've got about $1 million debt on that. So what's that? So
Yeah,
what's
actually,
that,
that makes a very, very good point, because the developer put 270,000 in plus 7, so 280,000. Let's just say he put $280,000 in, and he then has an asset that's worth now 1.8 million, and also the rents have increased, so it's not 500, 500, 500. You'd be getting
probably
600.
550.
Yeah,
Oh,
550, 600 each unit. So you would be absolutely crushing it right now. So
yeah.
not to rub it in, but also the thing is, people say that it's like when someone's like, "Oh, in the 1980s, I had this house
Could
and
have
I
bought 14 properties in Bondi.
should have held it." But still, it's like, yeah, you could have, but it's also you did the best with what you had at that time to be
Yeah.
allowing you to get into the next thing, which is going to allow you to get into the next thing. So I'm not always like, it's you did the best with what you had at the time. So
Yeah, but yeah, it's gonna,
don't look back is the answer. Like,
yeah, but that's often why developers that are keep on doing deals and selling all their stock, they're often the ones that don't get anywhere. They just end up, because they end up sort of, they make 50,000 or whatever it is, and then they go, or they make 100,000. They go on a big holiday for 6 to 10 weeks, and they spend 30, 40, $50,000. And you're just like, okay, well, so they're churning through deals, and then they have one or two deals that don't go, because speaking to developers, they say one out of every sort of 1 or 2 out of every 10 deals, you're going to be lucky to break even. And that's kind of where you really need to be super picky, particularly in the current market. But yeah, that's kind of word on the street that a lot of developments don't always make money. And if anything, particularly with rising build costs as well.
I mean, that's one that hits you hard, right? Like I'm chatting to a person right now, and they're like, "Yeah, we were going to do a development, and we've gone through the off the plan nonsense, and then we joined your group, and we thought, you know what, this is not the right way to go." But the builder has said it's going to cost an extra $120,000 to finish this build, and that's just one site. So it's going to, again, like your finance situation. If you had the finance situation and then the build cost challenges that are out there, this deal could have easily made nothing. So it's not like there's zero risk involved, but you guys did hem a lot of the risks to begin with.
Let's get into, is this full-time endeavor?
One of the questions, is this a full-time endeavor or a side hustle or something in between?
Probably something in between. At this stage,
the questions, it depends. Like what part are you? What's your job? So for the borrowing capacity partner, what did you actually do in this deal, Jeff? Like from a like what did
not
Jeff
a
do?
lot really. Apart from, I mean, the one thing that I think is vitally important is you really need to understand the area. Like I had a spreadsheet. I was looking for free. I knew pretty close to what sites were selling for, and what's the end, because there was starting to be more and more of these type of properties and product built. So you could clearly see what the end product was likely to sell for, and you could validate the feasibility, which is not something we did in a lot of detail, but yeah, you need to have a very realistic.
But what did you actually do, Jeff?
Looked on real estate for a little bit.
You didn't do much. You didn't do much. I mean, this is the thing, right? So if you're a borrowing capacity partner, you can, if there's enough trust, like Jeff, because the difference is you wanted to learn and you were using this as an education portion to, continue your education journey. And some people don't want to do that. Some people just want the $26,000 or the $50,000 at the end of it. But absolutely, this can be a side hustle or something on the side that you just do your thing with, and you trust the developer. One thing I wanted to touch on, Jeff, was we chatted about the different types of deals that you can run. You can run split equity, so you can say 25 25 25 25 or 33 33. But can you talk to the other way that you can do a borrowing capacity or
as in give somebody a fixed percentage?
Yeah.
So in that situation, let's play that out and say that I was going to be offered a return on my borrowing capacity of of 15%. I mean, which I don't know even. Or the money partner. Let's just say let's pretend I was a money partner, and I would get a 15% per annum return, or 15% for the deal, and the deal takes 12 months. So we'll keep it simple. Then I would have, let's see. So the person lent 280,000. So 20. So you would have then walked away with marginally more, because 15% of 280,000. Well, I suppose that's if you were the money partner, but you would have walked away with, what's that, about 42,000 approximately. But of course that would
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know how you've done that.
Well, it's kind of, yeah, it's because you half 28, which is 14, so 14 plus 28. Pretty good at mental maths.
Well played.
Apparently not being there. So that's the way you can do it. That's it. The person managing the deal is then taking on more risk, because if they have, let's just say they have the finance issue plus the build costs, and the deal only makes $20,000, the person who's lent that money still wants to see their 15%. So then there has to be some sort of, how is that person getting paid their return? Whereas if you only take a percentage, if you only take your 25% or whatever it is, 33%, then you get 33% of $30,000, which is essentially $10,000.
Yeah, and it's a great way to de-risk your situation as well. Like, you're not your income after this. You're going, like, after this 12 months of a deal, you're going to make, what is it, $42,000. That's it, fixed interest. You're going to make $42,000 no matter what. Now,
well, maybe not no matter what. Let's just say this, it's not guaranteed, because I mean, if the bank can't be paid off, I mean, it all comes down to what the joint venture agreement says. So in the and that's where it's absolutely vital to read and understand and just spell it out. If the deal doesn't make $42,000, what happens? How am I getting, and understand how am I getting paid my money?
Yeah, because, but also, if that deal doesn't make $42,000 and the money is paid into your account monthly or quarterly or annually, they can take the debt from one person, one borrowing capacity partner, and use the cash to pay the cash partner.
Yeah.
So there is
so structured that way. Yeah. So it's all then comes down to, because you could have it structured that you paid it at the end of the deal to minimize the holding costs. But yeah, if you wanted to de-risk, you would sort of get it written into the agreement that you'll pay that on a monthly basis or even quarterly.
So there are ways to structure the cash. So some people want to take a bigger risk. I feel like there's a bigger risk in taking a percentage, but there's a bigger reward with taking a percentage. So you can say, I want a fixed price percentage for my money, which a lot of people do. But here's a great question that's come up. Does it actually make sense for a buy, renovate, and hold strategy, or what you've kind of done?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to this, let's go back to our example in Newcastle. And we'll sort of let's go back to it, and I'll show you. Does it make? I mean, and of course we've had an absolute bull market in property, so let's not pretend that this is always going to do this. But you've essentially bought this property at $303,000 back in, that's 6 years ago. Let's call it 6.5, because 6 years ago. Yes, you have done. So you put 50K in it, so you're in for. What's that? Let's throw some stamp duty in there. So you're in for about 370. And now an estimated value of 647. So that's what, 85%. So you've close to doubled your money in 6 years. So I don't know if that sort of, and I suppose where it doesn't stack up is if you're buying holding. The challenge is that when you go to buy a next property, it can be hard to get money out of that particular deal, because you need to be able to, both parties need to be able to show serviceability.
Yeah,
to be able to,
but also someone has, you're the borrowing capacity partner, you're not the cash partner. So you've put in nothing, and the cash partner's put in $100,000 or $200,000. They can do something. What is the best utilization of that capital, and how can you assign it to something else? It's better for them, rather than, yes, they can hold it in 6 years and they may get it to 600,000. It may not be the best way to go. So generally speaking, what we see is in joint ventures, people don't buy, renovate, and hold because there's too many conflicting options, right? Like you've made money, you've got money, the borrowing capacity hasn't got as much invested, so
Yeah.
the incentives are not aligned. So
Well,
it
and
challenges.
life can be life changes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes somebody
Yeah.
will need that extra cash or need to go on if they want to buy their dream home. So I think
Mhm.
it's sort of it does get a bit more challenging the longer the joint venture goes.
Throw any of your questions in here as well. We're going to kind of wrap this up now. Jef has been waffling on. We're almost at 2 hours. This has been absolutely mental. What is regarded as the optimum profit margin? Would it change based on the project total cost and the state? Now, I'm going to jump in and
What are your
answer a
thoughts,
little
Joe?
bit of this. Yeah, thanks, Jef. You've got to factor in the time limit as well. So generally speaking, what you hear out in the world is you need a 20% builders, like a 20% margin. So that means you need to, so if there's $1 million, waffling on. Yeah, if you need $1 million, that you need to make $200,000 in profit. But Jef, you just showed me you made $26,000 in a year by only putting $7,000 of cash in. So there's no optimum profit margin. You do want to make sure that there are buffers, because if the buffer was at, the deal said that it could make 10%
15%.
margin, yeah, and then all this shit went down with the finance, you would have made 3% and you would have been a little bit struggling. So it's not that ideal.
I think anything, and Adam Barry spoke to this, like a more advanced developer, they sort of look at about 15% profit on cost. And even Bob, I think Bob said that as well, with a less complicated project. But once you start getting into bigger subdivisions, you want to really start to see your 20% profit on costs. And yeah, because then that way you're building in some fat into the deal, because otherwise, if things and what's the what do they call that, the IRR, internal rate of return, what is your other opportunities if right now interest rates are rising? So I saw the other day you can get 3.6% in the bank, which means you're losing money because in real terms, because inflation's eating away at that 3.6%. But
don't tell the banks that. They surely
this is a good point as well. 15%. Oh, sorry. Once if you're going through, and even private funders, that if it's your first deal with them, they will, anything less than 15%, they'll sort of start to say, well, nah, they won't fund that deal. Because it's too, because they've got to protect their own investment, because they've got to be able to get their money back if in any event they need to sell it, they need to take possession of it. So that's why, yes, 15%, anything less than that, if you're funding it with somebody else's money, if you're using your own money, if somebody's got a spare $1 million floating around, I mean, that's up to them what they want to do with their money, if they want to take that risk for that little amount of return.
Yeah. Some of the major banks are working on 3 to 5% margins, and that's why they're going broke. I mean, that's a different business though, right? Like that's a builder's margin rather than the margin for the deal. Yeah. Well, Jef, this has been an absolute this has been amazing. You have broken down step by step and provided so much value. So thank you very much for sharing this, mate. I did not expect this session to be. This is one of my favorite sessions, if I am to be frank. Instead of Joe.
Yeah. No, it's all right. Look, I've really enjoyed, and there's so much more I could have gone into, but it's even now I feel like I've gone on and could have condensed some of the sort of stories and all that sort of stuff. But I've enjoyed it, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to present. The team, the guys had wanted to hear what I've been up to and what I've done. This is only a small portion of the types of things that I've done. So, and many more types of these things to come. Focus is going to be elsewhere for the next 12 to 18 months, but who knows? I'll be coming soon to a development deal near you.
Sorry. No, that's good, mate. I've appreciated. This has been amazing. If anyone wants to reach out to you. Where can they get in contact, Jeff?
Please. I feel bad. There's people that reached out to me 4 months ago and I haven't responded. I'm sorry for I feel like people who wanted to post and do it.
Actually, this is a great question. Awesome presentation. Jeff, what's next? I want
to next time I'm doing something, I will actually, and thanks as well, Warwick, man. Look, I do love your contribution. I might heckle you a little bit here and there. I'm sorry, Warwick. Next deal, I want to do a simple duplex, because if I can, I'd love to be able to keep, because I've just seen how much money can be made in the buy, develop, and hold. So if I can fund one of these with my own capital, which I think in about 12 months I should be able to, if I can do that and fund that, I would be super, and I'd be happy to walk the group through the stages of that process as well, just to see how it goes. One of the best.
Yeah, that would be super interesting. I think this is one of the things. So I'm going to start getting into some of the I want to share some of the deals that I'm doing and as a part of. Yeah, fast track it. Marcel asked a question. Now, this doesn't need to be live on the podcast, but she asked a question about seeing the deal that we did on the development. If you jump on our newsletter, you'll see the after pictures of the renovation deal that we did. I meant to reply to your question before, but this has been one of the best sessions. That was from Jerry, I think. One of the best sessions. Jeff, all the hard work in presenting this great presentation. It's really just guided us all through the step-by-step process. So, mate, I look forward to the next one and helping being a part of it in somehow, and you sharing the amazing wisdom.
You too as well, Tucker. If you want to do a development, let's do a development at some stage. Keen.
Well, we got the cash, we got the borrowing capacity, we got the way to do it. Who's next? Let's get it done. Thanks, guys. Okay, let's go buy a development property. I guess that's the end of it. Stay well.
Thanks, everybody.